All right, the no hype zone back here on Weather for Weather Geeks a day before a modest snowstorm heads our way. I say no hype zone because I tend to think, or at least I hope, that this is not a hypey video at any point. I think our general weather product, both on air, on TV, and online, here at 21 News, is generally one of the least hypey sources of weather information you're going to find for our area or anyone else. We try to present just the facts, and we're going to talk about what to expect coming up on Friday. But first, a quick look back at 30 years ago. We were heading into the coldest night on record at this point 30 years ago. The morning of January 19th, we dropped to minus 22 at the Youngstown Warren Airport. There were some unofficial thermometers in Ohio that morning that read colder than minus 30. All-time records were set not only here in our area, but in Cleveland and Columbus and many other places. It was the coldest morning on record in so many places. And the high temperature that day was 6 below. We didn't even come close to hitting zero that day on January 19th, 1994. Over a third of the country had temperatures below zero that morning, and about 16% of the country was below 20 degrees below zero. First thing in the morning on the 19th, back in 1994. I was in high school, and I distinctly remember a lot of frozen pipes, and of course we had a lot of time off from school that week because that was one of several very cold days in mid-January back in 1994. All right, here in 2024, we have a winter weather advisory in effect for our entire television market. It becomes a winter storm warning up near the lakeshore from the western suburbs of Cleveland over towards Erie and Crawford counties in PA. You know, I put this graphic on my Facebook page last evening and caused a little bit of a stir. I don't think I'd posted this one before, but basically it is just showing the criteria used by weather service offices for issuing a winter storm warning. This was not a forecast. It was saying nothing really about any upcoming snow, and you know the graphic is clearly labeled, but some people took my post as meaning, hey, we're going to see 6 inches of snow here locally, and that's not what I was saying at all. This is the criteria for the issuance of a winter storm warning in most cases, and in central and northern Ohio and all of western PA, it's about 6 inches in 12 hours. That's what you get. That's what you need to expect for the Weather Service office to issue a winter storm warning for any location. Those winter storm warnings up near the lakeshore because, 6 or more inches does seem pretty likely in many of those counties with a little lake enhancement, in addition to just the general snowfall that's coming our way tonight into Friday. Our storm out here right now, and it's getting set to kind of go like this, and as it comes east, it's going to start to amplify and intensify and pick up some Gulf of Mexico moisture as well. And again, this is not certainly a huge snowstorm, but for many, it's going to be a real inconvenience at the end of the week. Here locally, we can expect it to snow overnight, of course. The timing's such that I think in most places it's snowing somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m. You might even see some flurries as early as 12:30 or 1 a.m., but certainly by 2, 3 o'clock or so, it's going to be snowing, so several hours before daybreak, and it's just going to keep on snowing for much of the morning and much of the afternoon as well. Now, you'd think if it were snowing steadily for 13 or 14 hours, we would be in for a huge snowstorm, but the intensity of this never is going to be crazy. Light to moderate snow. And so the likelihood of certain accumulations being achieved here, we think it's pretty much a lock that we're going to see 2 inches in our television viewing area by sunset Friday evening. Really good chance of seeing at least 3. And then once you get above 4, the chances certainly decrease. I think a lot of us are going to see 3 to 4 inches worth of snow from late tonight through sunset on Friday. That's the general snowfall. After that, we get in on some lake effect that will boost the totals in some places. We'll talk about that momentarily. As far as rolling accumulations, this is just a model depiction. It's certainly not going to be exactly how it plays out, but to give you a sense as to what to expect as you try to head out the door tomorrow morning. If you've got a doctor's appointment, or if you're going to go to work at your usual time, say 8 or 9 in the morning, there's probably going to be about an inch worth of snow on the ground at that point. We're on our way to 3 to 4 inches in most spots by the end of the day. But as most people head out the door in the morning, a fresh inch on the ground should be the rule. Now, this will be pretty fluffy snow. Not quite as fluffy as earlier this week when we had some snow and temperatures in the lower teens. We're going to have temperatures mostly in the 20s tomorrow. You oftentimes hear of a 10 to 1 snow to liquid ratio. That's pretty standard. In other words, 10 inches of snow equivalent to 1 inch of liquid. When you get lower ratios, 6 to 1, 7 to 1, that's really wet snow that has a lot of moisture in it. When you get colder temperatures, that means the air is usually quite a bit drier, and so you get ratios more like 15 to 1, 20 to 1. We're going to be in the 20s tomorrow. I think our snow ratios tomorrow are going to average about 15-1. And then as the lake effect component kicks in tomorrow night into Saturday, you can expect probably some ratios on the order of 20 to 25-1. Typically, lake effect snow with temperatures in the teens means really high ratio, fluffy snow is going to be the rule. That being said, with temperatures in the 20s, road treatment fairly effective at those temperatures. Not quite as effective as if it were close to freezing, but more effective than earlier this week when it was in the lower teens. We're going to be somewhere between 22 and 27 for a lot of our Friday, and that means that road treatment can be fairly effective, which means treated roads, most of our main roads, we're not expecting super high impacts. You're certainly going to have to take it slow. But this will be primarily a huge issue for secondary roads, roads that typically aren't treated as much. Every flake can still stick if they're not treated, and with temperatures well below the freezing mark. The intensity of the snow, again, is never going to be crazy tomorrow, but it's going to be light to moderate all day long until it starts to taper off as we get into the mid and late afternoon. After about 3 o'clock, we're going to notice the snow becoming a little more scattered or intermittent, and this will truly become more of a lake effect event a few hours after sunset tomorrow evening and into the overnight. Real cold air blowing over the still relatively ice-free Great Lakes. There's only about 18% coverage on Lake Erie at this point, and most of that's on the western end of Lake Erie. So the lakes are still pretty wide open for business, and certainly tomorrow night, the lake effect snow is going to be going hot and heavy in western Michigan, parts of Ontario and Quebec, and down into northern Indiana. In Ohio, it's going to be our usual suspects tomorrow night into Saturday morning. Lake, Geauga, Ashtabula counties, Erie and Crawford over in PA. Cuyahoga County can do pretty well for a time tomorrow night, but then the wind becomes a little more northwesterly, which means it's mostly east of Cleveland eventually tomorrow night and heading into Saturday morning. And across our TV market, there's going to be some scattered flurries and snow showers through Saturday, and clouds should then break for some sunshine coming up on Sunday. So again, 3 to 4 by about sunset tomorrow evening. That's a general snowfall for our entire coverage area. But then maybe an additional inch to 2 or 3 in parts of our snowbelt areas, our secondary snowbelt areas. That's mostly around and north of I-80. You could see an additional inch to 2 or 3 tomorrow evening through the day on Saturday, bringing your grand totals in those locations from tonight through Saturday up to maybe a half a foot in some spots. But again, that's kind of an exception. That's our snowbelt areas. If you're in Columbiana County, certainly, and a lot of Mahoning County, a lot of Lawrence County, most of your snow is going to be tonight and tomorrow, and probably not a whole lot in terms of lake effect. Overall, the stripe of heaviest snow will be in the spine of the Appalachians from the higher terrain east of Pittsburgh down through the Laurel Highlands and then down into parts of West Virginia. But even in places that are east of there that have had very, very little snow in the last few winters, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, they're going to see at least a couple of inches out of this storm. All right, next week, the thaw is coming at this point, but what's also coming, several chances for rain, and with snowmelt really kicking in earnest during midweek, we're going to have to keep an eye on area rivers and streams, not expecting a huge flood event because we're not going to have a foot of snow on the ground, but a few inches worth of snow melting in addition to pretty good chances for rain on several occasions next week. That means that we'll just have to keep an eye out for some nuisance flooding, especially around those rivers and streams. That'll be our story for next week, but in the meantime, we've got plenty to talk about over the next couple of days. And coming up tonight on 21 News 11, I'll have a full update on what to expect as far as timing and amounts over the next 24 to 36 hours. You can get that forecast anytime on the Storm Tracker 21 app. I'll see you back here on Friday for kind of a recap edition of Weather for Weather Geeks.